welcome to another Mr. Betabyte video, and this one's a little bit different insofar as this is part 3 of Hungry Joe, the Sony HF950 that you'll remember had problems with rewind, and we ended up replacing that part of the rail for the sled. So that's all good, it's working well, really pleased. And you'll remember that I did actually have problems with power. Sometimes it wouldn't power up, other times it would get all sort of confused and start doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. It even, last night, actually managed to spill out a whole load of tape. It just suddenly decided to run one of the spools and throw out a load of tape, which wasn't good, and ran the heads at full speed as well. Crazy. But I did actually go through the power supply, and the power supply is good, checks fine, no bad joints. I did change a couple of capacitors that were a bit on the dodgy side, so they're all good, and yeah, fine, absolutely fine. And thought, great, that's probably going to be enough to sort it, but it isn't. And the fault is actually quite concerning, especially as I've since spoken with Andy, and he did say that it had had a bit of a rough trip. This was actually bought from an eBay seller in Germany who sells a lot of stuff, I believe. I believe it's the same seller, a lot of stuff on eBay. And it was not well packed. It had a very rough ride over to the UK. And I suspect that's probably what broke the rail, or at least caused it to crack and subsequently break. But I am now suspecting we've got a crack in one of the boards. So let me demonstrate what it's doing. So that's now playing. And if I press pause, let's see, let's just press that pause. And can move forward, but I can't do any of these. Times 2 works, times 9 works. And back, forward. Let's go back to play. And I now can't. So that is, but these aren't working. And there we go. So just pressing the buttons, and in the end, it just goes off. So you can see it's pretty much playing dead now. What happened last night when I was testing this is I was actually in still, and the still lights actually stayed on. Everything else went off, machine totally dead, but the still light was on. Now that says to me it can't be a power supply fault. Well, I say that. Could be a power supply fault, but I doubt it, especially now I've checked the power supply and everything is fine on it. So, my thought is there's got to be more than likely a problem with it's a double-sided PCB, I seem to remember, for the button assembly here, but I won't be surprised there's a crack in it, a hairline crack somewhere, or worse. So, yeah, see, that's totally locked now. So let's just unplug it, plug it back in. Yeah, still nothing. Oh, there we go. See, I've got pause light now. The clock blinked. Give it a tap. No. Sometimes you give it a tap somewhere around here. It'll start. Yeah, so yeah, I don't think that's going to come back to life. So let's have a look at it and take it apart, see how bad the damage is. Okay, so let's take it apart again. And you never know, there's every risk that I might have to finally remove the bottom part of the case, because I haven't actually done that yet. Everything I've done, I've managed to do without having to remove it. And because it is purely a repair, so it's not a full service as such. And to be fair, it works really well. When it works really well. I've not had cause to remove the bottom panel, so but that may well change depending on what we find and the damage. And I could really do with removing the sled slightly, so I can get the cover off. 3 screws underneath, 1 screw on the top that you saw me take out. If you take the sled off or out slightly, you can actually manoeuvre the front cover off without having to take off the lid assembly. So let's see if I can do that. Just pull very gently. Doesn't have to go out far. There we go. So just putting the tabs on the sides. Little tabs up top. And this is a little bit of a fiddle. Or maybe you do. Oh, I don't know. No, you don't. I was going to say maybe you do have to take the front off, but you don't. So there we go. A couple of tips I want to think about is, if you're doing the cheap method of getting the front cover off, just make sure that when you pull the drawer out, this bit of metal isn't too close to these 2 tabs, because if they are, you won't be able to undo them. So you can see here, that's a little bit back, and so I can unlatch the catches. And the other thing is, of course, always remember when you take these off, just push all the side switches down, so when you push this back on, they locate. And before you put all the screws in, just make sure all the switches actually work, so you do properly flick, and they flick their full travel. Because if they don't flick their full travel, the chances are you've not got them located properly, and there's every risk that you'll crack the plastic on the assembly behind the plastic here on the front panel. And I've seen quite a few HF950s are the same. The buttons need to be all lined up before you put the front cover on. And I've seen so many front covers with button assemblies that are cracked and broken just because somebody hasn't bothered to check that, and they've just rammed it on and broken it. So top tip, especially as these machines are getting older, just be careful of those buttons. Right. Well, I have to say, I don't see anything obvious. Okay, so I'm going to just drop the board to see if there are any more clues. I sort of wonder about this board, just because it's a bit odd how those 3 functions aren't working. There is nothing obvious going on here that I can see. No cracked print. Bit of a graze there. I suppose if we power it back up with this removed, just see what it does, I suppose. The clock's on. So flex the board. You can hear it hunting. Ooh, now that's working. I mean, this isn't purely a case of it touching somewhere that it shouldn't be. That's really weird. So what's going on there? Is it something on here that has got bent, or I don't think there's anything missing. I don't think there's anything wrong. Oh, I really don't like intermittents. It could be such a pain to find. I just wonder, let's line that up. So, looking at these bits of metal here, got one here, one here, two down here, one here I think, although I think that's over the top anyway, this one, and that one. And they all press against the back of the board, but they line up to blank areas on the print. And you can see, or maybe you can't, but there are actually marks on the board where they have rubbed. So you can see that they're missing all of the key areas. But I just wonder if maybe the board itself wasn't, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. I mean, is it a bad connector? Doesn't seem like it. I mean, it's working. Well, I suppose the thing is give it a go and put it back together and see what happens, I suppose. That's all we can do. So, yeah, let's do that now. So let's put this back together and just see where everything sort of lands, I guess. That's all we can do. Now I can see a bit of an issue. The one leg of the switch there is very, very close to that bit of metal. It's not touching. Everything else appears to be good. I just wonder if that is just not quite where it should be. And sort of looking at it, it is slightly, maybe a little bit, not quite right, I don't know. On the camera it looks good, but looking at it on sort of directly, it's sort of slightly not quite right. So yeah, I'm going to have a look at that. I needn't have worried. It's actually an earth point anyway, so it wouldn't matter if it was touching. It's the this is an earthing point, and this is just the screening for the switch, which Sony switches seem to have. They have this metal metal cover on them, like this, which is actually grounded. See there, sort of shields the switch for what it's worth. Slight overkill, maybe, but I mean, I replaced them with standard tact switches, and they're fine. So I've never had a problem, but I think it's just Sony over-engineering there. So I'm going to put this back together, and we'll see how we get on. Okay, so I've put this back on, but I did find that this mounting bracket here, where it comes off the chassis here, was actually too high, and it was causing the board to be slightly rising up from this side. Whether that was causing the issue, I don't know. But anyway, I've managed to push it down. Wasn't easy, but I pushed it down, and it now lines up pretty true to the bottom here of the mounting section for this board. So let's give it a go, and if we press play, and I should be able to press pause. Yeah, all the trick modes are working now. I can't find the button. There we go. Just sort of wiggling the board as well. ×1. That was ×1. ×2. ×1. Magic. So that's really good. So I'm really chuffed that that was all it was. I mean, I'm still not convinced I know where it was actually shorting or doing whatever. But the board is fine, check's fine. Could well be just literally because that bracket there was not quite properly aligned for the board. That was enough for whatever it was to touch whatever it was. Bizarre. But anyway, I'm not going to complain. So I suppose the next thing is to put it back together and give it a run and see if that has indeed fixed it. So even if you drop all the switches, it's well worth just checking they all work before you put the screws in. As you could see, one of the sliders, even though all of them were dropped down, still didn't work. And it is a bit frustrating when you put one of these back together and you don't check the switches. So yeah, just check the switches. It's all good. So they all work. That's great. Oh, that's not very good, is it? So why has that done that? Is that board still not sitting quite right? This is really a horrible thing to do. Just wondering why it did that. I mean, it's all fine. I've not marked the plastic, which is good. Just had to be a bit careful. But that, you see, doesn't feel right. It's just not quite right. I mean, I don't know. Okay, so I sorted the issue with the quick timer button. It's still to do with the standoffs, well, basically the chassis being slightly distorted. So I've pushed it in a bit. I mean, it's a horrible repair, to be honest. I'm not proud of this. But I've pushed it in a bit, straightened it out, straightened the tab out. So it now sits pretty much properly there. I might have to adjust it a bit more. But this was actually quite a few mil off the metal standoff there. So we'll see. But that's all that was. But the cutting out, and amazing how it did cut out in such a way. It was down to this bit of metal here. This is the spring for the buttons, so they're really very beautifully sprung. And this was actually bent up. And how I missed it, I don't know. But having said that, if it's not something you're looking for, sort of looking at this, and I mean, it is quite deep. But yeah, this was actually pressing against the board. And I do think, to be honest, all of the problems I was having with this, and even down to these buttons not working, these three, was down to that being so badly bent and just pressing up against the board. I mean, I've not done a wonderful job in straightening that, but I'm not going to start popping the plastic rivets just to get it perfect. And it works. It's fine. So yeah, that's quite an interesting sort of bundle of fun, this one. Bother powering it off. I still haven't taken off the bottom cover. How cool is that? I've managed to do a whole machine repair without taking the bottom cover off. That's great. And yeah, it's slightly odd. In some ways, it would have been quite fun to take it off just to see how much dust is present in this fully refurbished machine. I would never call a machine fully refurbished unless it has all the dust removed and the service, alignment, and crucially, a new pinch roller, because a refurbishment isn't a refurbishment without a new pinch roller. And yeah, good luck finding one of those. So yeah, back together. So next thing is to plonk it on top of the Toshiba V9600 again and see how we go. Okay, so let's give it a test. But yeah, it's pretty good, to be fair. Let's have a look. Super Beta, Need to put it on standard because this is a standard recorded tape apparently. Standard Super Beta tape. We put that to line PCM. Obviously still got a dead element on the first red on here. But yeah, you can see the on-screen display there. And let's try the trick modes still. So I can press still from here, which is cool. Let's adjust the tracking. So let's just move that so you can actually see the advanced 1/10, 1/5 times 1. This is a grainy video, so it's fine. It's times 2, so that uses standard tracking to adjust that out. So it's not ideal, but yeah, it's not bad. And then times 9, which is just basically scan, picture search. So I will say the trick modes are a little bit out. They could do with being aligned, but for what this machine is going to be used for, it's not a major problem. And this should have been done, to be honest. It's a fully refurbished machine in inverted commas, and this should have been done. So yeah, but I know Andy doesn't want me to spend too much time on this and just basically get it so it does actually play, which it does now do. So I'm more than happy with this, and it's great it's not shutting down. So like I say, I will leave it now and just leave it play through a couple of tapes over the next 24 hours and then get this back to Andy. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and look forward to seeing you in another video.